we'll get started tonight. I know people will join as we're moving along, but I know we said we start at 7, so we'll get started. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know we're getting close to the spring, and here in central Des Moines has hit almost 50 degrees today, so I'm sure everybody's getting that feeling to get out and get things done. But we want to thank you for joining us, and we want to go over Organic Transition webinar today. And through my transition the last 5 years, and we're still transitioning ground, working with growers through the last 5 years, and Ken as well, and the rest of our team have been doing it for quite a while now. We want to put on a webinar that focuses on the pitfalls of organic transition, and there's quite a few of them, and they can follow into the organic. So this is not only transition, but how do they fall into organic and set you up possibly for a bad organic experience, and how do we avoid them? We'll have 2 presenters tonight. The first is me, Bryce Irlbeck. I've been 5th generation farmer. Grew up in western Iowa, building an organic farm back there. Started about 5 years ago on that organic farm, and made a lot of mistakes. A lot of the same mistakes we'll be talking about tonight, paid the tuition on them. And we want to share those with you and give you an idea how we built a company and a process and system around avoiding those same mistakes, because they can be very costly and, again, affect you into the organic side of it. And the second presenter that you'll hear tonight is Kenn Jenkins. He started with us 2 years ago, organic farmer as well, 1st generation. Organic farming gave him the start for multiple reasons up in his area. But I'll let Ken introduce himself now.
Thanks, Bryce. So as Bryce mentioned, I'm a 1st generation farmer up in northern Iowa, north central Iowa. My background is I have an agronomy degree. It's a bachelor's from Iowa State, and it was a soils focused degree. Spent a lot of time working on soil fertility with chicken manure with guys, so got a lot of background working with organic growers in that field as well.
Thank you, Ken, and Ken will be the first presenter on the first 7 slides. So I will turn it over to him, and he can go through them.
Yeah, thanks again. And so I'm sure, I suspect a lot of you are joining this call because you understand the organic demand. The reality is that the conventional markets are increasingly tight with today's farm economy, and the challenges farmers are presented with by the global trade wars, shifting market demands, and the competition from abroad make it even more difficult to break even. And so if we look at the market outlook, it's really strong and it's growing at a good demand. The price premiums on the organic side is 2 to 3 times what it is on the conventional side. So as you can see in the chart below there, that the organic corn market has been trading on an average of $9 plus per bushel for over the last decade. So that just goes to show that there's a strong return there, and we get paid for the extra work that we put in. But one of the other benefits is that we've seen that there's some soil health benefits that go along with this if you pick the right rotation and you plan things out right. And so planning is going to be a big key with a lot of these things to make sure that you're setting yourself up for that success. So some of the common, with organic demand, you know, there's a lot of people thinking about it, the transition, but tonight I'd like to just cover a few of the common pitfalls that we've identified. Tonight we'll discuss the following pitfalls: acres. So how do I decide which acres to use? The rotation, what should my rotation be, or what should I consider when I'm picking a rotation? The insurance side of it, how does that affect you when you're organic versus how you are when you're conventional? Or the systems and processes, because organics is a different ballgame. So how do we manage it? Because we're going to be managing a little bit different than the conventional side. So when we're trying to determine the right number of acres to start with, it really varies from operation to operation. So we kind of have this idea that there's a Goldilocks zone in there. And so one of the pitfalls is starting with too few of acres or too many acres. So this is one area that AgriSecure works with its clients on quite a bit. And so starting with too few of acres, you'll see that you can't get a feel for the scalability. and it makes it harder to identify the bottlenecks and the challenges as you grow. And then sub-optimized ROI. So, you know, if you've got a $10,000 piece of equipment and you're only using that across 50 acres, that's a $200 an acre cost over those 50 acres. Whereas if you're transitioning 250 acres, that spreads that cost out and you're getting, it's more of a $48 an acre cost. And then that other part is that, you know, you're going to delay the economic return. And this is the number one thing that our clients say in their first year of organics is, I wish I would have started with more. So the big thing there is don't let the fear be the limiting factor for you. Starting with too many acres, the transition will really stretch and stress the cash flow. This is a different level of execution required, and you don't want to be playing catch up. You know, so if you don't execute right, you can find yourself kind of with some new sets of challenges that may take years to recover from. So not going too deep into it, that's something that we'd love to work with guys on. And so finding that just that right, the right amount of acres to transition with, it lets you understand the scale, it lets you balance your learning and your speed to scale, and then you truly feel the economic benefit through the remainder of the transition process. So how do you determine the acres? So if you can see, you see in the chart there that you have the economic impact on the top and the ability to execute on the left. Starting with too high or starting with too few, you're going to have a tougher challenge really understanding. It'll be easier for you to execute, right? But the economic impact won't be there. It'll be delayed. Whereas having too many, the ability to execute is going to be a challenge, and then you're going to be stretched even thinner through the transition process. So finding that right target area. So again, this is an area that we work with our clients on constantly. Crop rotation, figuring out, you know, the balancing acres and the workload. So that way you're making sure you're balancing the economics and agronomics as well. What your access is to labor, can you get across all the acres and complete the task in a timely manner? What's your balance sheet look like? What are you able to do without stretching yourself too thin? And then how do you balance again, you know, the revenue over those few years? And then what kind of support system do you have? Because even if it's not with AgriSecure, we recommend that you have some sort of support system, that you have some sort of mentorship or someone that you can kind of lean on in this area of expertise, because it is a different game. So then when we look at crop rotations and how do we balance the economics and the agronomics, you can see that there's a scale there, and really that scale is symbolizing, you know, if you don't have the money to really invest as you go, you can still make the transition, but you might find some other challenges agronomically, where if you have more cash that you can actually invest in a higher amount. So say you're going to plant alfalfa, you might set yourself up for better agronomics in that first year of organics. So the key factors that we want to look here at, again, these are key factors that we work with guys on, and we spend a lot of time working on rotations because this is an important part. So the field conditions, we want to know, you know, what your coming out of, what you plan to transition with, what your weed situation and your weed pressures look like, what's your nutrient profile of the soils that you're working with, where your location is. That really depends on what kind of markets are available to you. You know, alfalfa is a great way to rotate, but if you don't have a good alfalfa market in the area, that makes that a struggle. And then again, the balance sheet and what is your banker support? Does your banker understand organics? Are they behind you? Are they willing to help work with you throughout this whole thing, throughout the whole process of transition? You know, and then the biggest challenge for our guys in transition is going to be the mindset. So conventional is a year to year, and then organic is going to be more long term. So you got to think longer term. So the big pitfall here is, you know, trying to get away from that, you know, next year the market looks like it's going to be like this, so I'm going to go heavier on corn. You know, you have to really build out that plan. So what you see on the screen there is the crop rotation plan. It's only showing 3 years, but we actually build this out for 5 years out because we want to think long term. You know, maybe things change as we go, but this is also something that you have to have for the NOP. So it's a requirement that you're showing what your plans are and what your rotation is going to look like. So you really do have to think long term on that. And this is actually comes from our MyFarm platform. So this is something that our clients have access to all the time, and they get to actually see what they're doing, where their acres are going to be at. And it goes back to that balancing their, you know, now all of a sudden I know I'm doing 180 acres of organic corn one year, and then I'm dropping to 100 acres the next year, and then back to 210 the next year. That's also going to mess with the revenue stream. But then you also get, with organics, you get this, you get the benefit of having a small grain back in the rotation. And then that also helps shift the workload as well. But again, it goes back to that, you know, you're making more money on the organic side, even on the small grains. So typically that also is a benefit on the small grains as well. It's not as much of a challenge as we see in the wheat market today. So the insurance side of things is a little bit different on the organics. And this is where the really, I think one of the biggest challenges are. The big pitfall here though is taking conventional insurance during transition. So that can set up a couple other issues. So the implication here is that, you know, lower revenue protection given during because you have conventional prices with lower yields. So if you see in the chart there, we have corn. So on the conventional side, you're used to a 210 bushel APH. Well, then once you go into the transition phase, you're going to have 115 T yield. In this example, it depends county by county. So then, you know, on the conventional side, you have a 390 guarantee price. Well, that same price is there on the transition side. So if you're taking 85% coverage, you can kind of see the difference that the floor isn't as secure for you. But the risk is if you don't follow the guidelines, you could have a claim denied, or you can be incorrectly paid on a claim through transition, and then you might have to repay that or be subject to fines and other penalties for taking those.
Thank you, Ken, and I'll add a little bit into this is as we see a lot of people go out and transition through corn and soybeans, and either they take conventional insurance, which we highly suggest against, as you can see the risk on the right side there. Not to mention it is fraud, and there's other penalties we haven't even mentioned in there that adds risk to your situation, and we don't recommend that. But then looking at the numbers, if you look at a transition APH and you only have $381 of coverage, what else works to transition? What's good for your farm? What do we recommend? We see a lot of people go out and transition 180 acres, 300, 400, 500 acres and not even understand the risk or the cost. And the whole premises of what I understood going through this, not understanding these numbers or the risk that I was actually taking, planning, and more planning is what takes place, because there's a lot of pitfalls, as we said, going through this, and I'll dive even more later into this presentation. But planning and execution planning and more planning is what this takes to be successful, and understanding where those pitfalls come, and insurance is one of those. So just adding into that, Ken, on that side.
Yeah, thanks, Bryce.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so then just the other piece of this to consider and to proactively manage is how do you get yourself ahead? And so I think I'll let actually, Bryce, if you want to speak to this.
Yep. So the number one thing is starting early on this, and starting correctly is the right amount and the right rotation and the right planning and the right understanding of risk and the right numbers that you use to understand that risk to set that plan. And so when I start organic production in a new area, I'm looking to increase the APH practices and crop rotations that I can manage with my level of management, my level of labor, that also is acceptable to my banker. So smart rotations play a positive dividends. If I leave you with one thing tonight, there's not enough iron in this world to do organic at scale. I've seen people try to do it. I've seen people fail at it multiple times. But that green, shiny equipment, you can't buy enough of it to stay ahead of the weeds. So crop rotations are an important part of this, and then that also builds into the insurance side of it. How do we insure these different crops? I mean, we have a field of peas and canola in Iowa, 500 acres this year. How do I insure them? And we work with FBN on the crop insurance and Eric Sorensen. They have an understanding of how to look at this, how to manage the risk on a whole farm level and a per crop level, which this completely changes from what we're used to in corn and soybeans when we start doing crop rotations, but they're the most important part. Diversifying crops growing. So I'm growing 11 different crops. I don't recommend doing that. I'm trying to get down to 3, maybe 4 crops, but you're going to have to grow more than corn and soybeans, especially in the transition. Think about how we increase the APHs quicker. And one of the ways we do this, even in transition, is splitting up fields. There is not a split that you have to do. You don't have to do 50-50, but having corn and soybeans in a field or setting up how to look at a section or a county or per field level has great benefits, not day 1, but year 5. Understanding how to build those quicker APHs and getting that risk down at a farm level. So one thing that we work with is our crop insurance agents quite a bit, just understanding what's out there, how do we minimize risk, and how do we look at it not just year 1, but year 5 is one of the more important things on there. And so most of your county T yields are going to be in that 100 to 130, which today will actually provide you fairly good insurance coverage at the organic side, not the transition side. But again, that planning on day 1 is so critical, even insurance from crop rotations to understanding the numbers and economics, where you're marketing, the agronomy side of it. It's just much more complicated than the conventional side. When you're just talking corn and soybeans and everybody on the corner has something to sell you that will fix your problem, that's not the same in organic. It's not the same in transition. It's much more complicated, but solvable and manageable as long as you have a plan and execution plan. And so this part of it we're going to get into, and I'll bring it back to my personal experiences as well as our team experiences, is don't bring a knife to a gunfight. And the old adage is try not to fail. That's a really bad place to go in transition. And then we see a lot of people, their first step is to do soybeans. And I had that first step too. I did it on my farm, complete disaster. And the reason is people go, oh, soybeans are cheap. I can put them in cheap. You know, if I fail, I don't have that much invested into it. And that's not the right thinking. So when we go into this organic transition and organic production, is that plan of understanding the numbers. You know, if I plant soybeans, this is my risk. If I plant alfalfa, this is my investment and my risk. And what happens on year 3 to give me the best possible return when I'm organic? Is it corn, soybeans, or corn, soybeans, corn? Or is it alfalfa, corn, 100 pounds of nitrogen credit, and I have 0 weeds that got escaped during those first 2 years? So don't try the story behind this, and I learned it as well as I told you, is if you're going in trying not to fail, that's the wrong mindset. Be prepared, have a plan, understand the numbers. Again, understanding the numbers with my banker now after 5 years, I have a pretty good relationship with him because he knows my numbers. He has access to them daily, and they're updated every week. He sees where I'm at, but he knows I'm going to lose $200 an acre on alfalfa the first year transition. He knows I'm going to break even the second year, and he knows that my crop insurance on the third year is going to take care of that risk. Now, it took him quite a while to get comfortable with that, but having those numbers available, having an execution plan, one that's set up for success and one that's not trying to just not fail is one of the key aspects we see of this, building a system and process. Smart decisions and execution. Believing organic premiums will cover for average. This is one when I got started 5 years ago. Corn was still 10, 11 bucks. Soybeans were still $22 to $25. I could make a lot of mistakes and still be covered with the organic premiums. And as the industry's matured and it's grown and people are becoming better at this, there's not as much room or margin of error for mistakes right now. You have to do things right, and you have to be able to be on your game in all facets of insurance, agronomy, marketing, and seed buying and selling, and all assets of this. You can't make the mistakes I made when I first started. It's just the margin is not the same as it was. It's still very good. But as I've learned, you have to have a systems approach through this entire process. We feel at AgriSecure, organics will encounter pressure from the growth and maturity. There is more people jumping into it. So if you don't have a plan to be a top grower at it and work at it and take on the challenge, it will be difficult. And we feel there's still a first mover advantage, that there's still significant premium built in the market. One of the things I'm learning this year is information is power in this market. It's like a dark closet in the market, that there is not free-flowing information. You can't look at the Chicago board. You can't see the ships coming into the port with organic or non-organic grain. You don't know if you're buying a $260 bag of organic seed corn, if that's a good price or not. Are you paying $100 for Regalia, a fungicide, when it is actually sold at $45? There is not the free flow of information, and so information is power in this, and smart information allows good informed decision making. I can tell you I've probably cut $100 to $200 an acre off my production cost for organic corn just by understanding the input market. Chicken manure, Regalia, seed, all that type of stuff that allows me to make informed decisions. And then operational efficiency, like Ken talked about before. If you're going to go out and do 180 acres and buy all the equipment for that, and then do the 180 acres in organic, it's going to be 5 to 7 years before you make a return on your investment, just the equipment cost to get started up. So really thinking through what's the right starting point, what do I have to buy, what time am I going to have to commit to this, and what is my risk on here. So that operational efficiency, I see a significant amount of producers that will go in and buy all the equipment and never get big enough to have a return on it. So there is economies of scale, and again, we don't recommend going and doing your entire farm, but figuring out what that economy of scale is for you and where you want to be in the future, so you have a plan to get there. And just rehashing this again, is believing organic premiums will cover for average. Again, you have to be a very good producer, both management of the ground, management of the finances, the insurance, and everything in between to be good at organic. The organic premium, as in the past, is not going to make up for the mistakes that, frankly, that I've made as well. I've become a better producer, and it's not the same as it was 5 years ago. This takes execution, it takes planning, even in transition. It takes a system to be able to do this. So at AgriSecure, that's what we developed for the last 5 years. It started in year one. I learned very quickly that things were getting out of control, and either I was going to be in organic or be out of it, and decided that I wanted to figure it out. And number one I start even before number one is information. I started with 300 acres of alfalfa. I took it out of alfalfa, put it into soybeans, did okay on it, but if I would have had information, I would have put it into organic corn and probably tripled the net revenue I had that year. So just simple information that other people have learned is key to start that planning process. And going into that planning process with all the available information you can have is going to save you a ton of money and a ton of mistakes and a ton of heartache. And then number one that we've developed at AgriSecure is how to develop a plan. And that plan is field by field, year by year, to understand how we're going to transition, where the losses are going to come, where the profitability is going to come, so nobody is caught off guard and we can make the right decisions. We're not making fear decisions, and we're not making decisions without information. And so number one, we at AgriSecure start at a plan, and that plan again is field by field over the whole farm, out to 1 year, out to 10 years. Some people go, knowing that it's going to change. But if you don't know where you're starting and where you're going to end, you're just blindly walking through this entire process that could be very, very expensive tuition. A lot more expensive than my Iowa State tuition is what I found. And so we start with a plan, and that plan goes into how do we execute on this? Do we have the equipment to do it? Do we have the manpower? Do we have the markets to actually be able to execute in the area I'm in on the rotation that we've developed in that plan? Can I get the manure? Can I get the seed? What is my insurance level? What is my risk on this execution? And that falls in between 1 and 2. And now we get to the hard part. From execution to tracking is the organic certification. We built a software platform around this organic certification to help take that away, track the execution, and develop the plan. And so everything that happens on your farm through transition into organic has to be traceable and trackable and presentable. If it isn't documented, no matter if it happened in the certifier's eyes, it never happened. So how do we track all this information at a scalable production farm? So we look at that tracking, and most people, at a small scale, they can plan, they can execute and track at 180 acres. Don't get me wrong. As you grow, that becomes more important, and we feel like growing is the key to success in this, is as any commodity business. And so going from 3 to 4 on this, we look at tracking to report and analyze. That's one thing that a lot of people do not do. And I go to a bunch of organic conferences, and it's a lot of, and I say, and I don't want to be mean about this, but it's a lot of pretty pictures with a lot of good ideas without understanding of what's actually profitable, what actually works, what is doable in my operation. And so one of the things I found key for all aspects of my operation, and number one is the banking aspect, is what am I actually doing that's profitable in this organic side? Because there's not university data out there. There's not good data on a farm level. And I'm talking from crops that there's rolling rye profitable. I work with an individual out of Illinois that's been rolling rye for a while, and it's been pretty successful. But at the end of the year, he's got a huge walking bill on his rye, and it's actually more profitable for him to do tillage on soybeans than to roll rye on it at some point. So we take all that data that you collect normally in a transition and organic system, and it's in a notebook, a very large notebook, all paper. We built that into a digital system that can take the data, analyze it, and give it back to you, as well as provide for certification on what is working, what isn't working, and do that in an efficient manner that is scalable. And so again, looking at this, plan, execution, track, and report. These are things that I didn't do well when we started off. That's why we built the company around this, to make life easier. There is also other things besides these that go along with AgriSecure, such as marketing, and we can get into that. But the markets are a black hole too. Nobody understands them. There isn't people out there that are working for the producer to understand them. There is grain buyers out there, but again, their job, number one, is to buy at the lowest price and resell at the highest price. That's their goal. Nothing wrong with that. That's business. But we at AgriSecure have an individual that is, his number one job is just to understand what the markets are doing, where they're at, who's trading what, and give information to the farmer. He has no other agenda behind that other than finding out everything about the organic markets and where they're headed, what's going on. As well as we have part of input supply. We don't sell anything, but we partner with people that have that, such as FBN. Again, the simple fact of going to the co-op and getting a fungicide, that takes 30 to 30 minutes to an hour. If you're going to do that in organic, you'd buy it online or through somebody that's probably not within 30 minutes of you, and you'd get it in a week. And so we work to shore that up, not only fungicide, but manure as well. And this whole plan of transition in organic is things don't just happen as they do in conventional. So it's one thing to keep in mind that can cause issues down the road. Again, at AgriSecure, we're working on all these, and at times they can be overwhelming even for me, and as doing this for 5 years, and that's not a terribly long time, but going it alone, there's a lot of aspects of decisions that I'm on the phone every day and Kenn's on the phone every day. And we have a network of support through insurance, FBN insurance, input providers, market providers that we're gathering each day and understanding the information and flow of information and providing that to our producers. So, I mean, you have things as crop rotation. I at my farm, I'm already working on 2021 sales. I understand what my crop rotation is going to be in 2021, and I am pretty much finished with 2020 sales for the most part. But that crop rotation is important to understand what's going to work on your farm and getting ahead of the sales. A lot of the producers in organic I see are just trying to get their hands around what they're going to do this year and transition into organic, and I already have all my transition sales done as well. So figuring that crop rotation and crop plan, and those are two huge things without information that would be very difficult. Weed management and equipment. What are the best practices? What's working? What's not working? Should I invest into a $60,000 flamer because it works all the time? So those are things that just take time and information to understand. And now you talk about fertility and crop inputs. I work up in South Dakota with a grower that's basically taking a very significant portion of manure, movable manure in South Dakota. So working to find out relationships long-term that you have fertility and that you buy crop inputs and you don't spend 100% over what they're worth and in the marketplace, because there's people out there selling organic inputs at 100% over what the marketplace is valuing them at. So understanding what those prices should be, what should I pay for chicken manure? How much should I pay for it to be applied? How much should I apply? Those are all questions that a ton of research has to be done and understanding, but having a group and a network can be very beneficial. And then going into the certification and record keeping is a whole nother beast that we can provide a lot of efficiency on and a lot of guidance on. It's what we specialize in, is making that so it's not a worry on the farm. It's nothing that's going to come up and be something that takes away from actually producing the crop and producing as many bushels as you can. Going into agronomy, again, these are different crops. You'll have 3 to 5 different crops on your farm once you get into this and you're doing it successfully. It's difficult. I mean, I went out and bought barley today, and I called around in our network to see what is the best barley variety, what should I be paying for it, what are some thoughts behind it, what should I seed it at? And so there's a lot more than corn and soybeans that go into this if you're going to be successful. I've seen I haven't had anybody that's been successful long term in just growing corn and soybeans organically. The weeds will get to you. So the agronomy question is not if I'm going to grow something, it's I have to grow something other than corn and soybeans to keep weed control and keep plant health and be competitive in the market with my production costs. Again, going down to the marketing, I'll just rehash this and bring it up again. It's the marketing has a lack of information in it, and at AgriSecure, we're focusing on bringing information through that marketing and understanding where markets are headed, where markets are going. The market of organic corn right now is in that $7 to $7.50. We've had a few people lucky enough to market last year at $9 for 2020 crop. And now we're working through people that haven't had anything marketed to think through what the season will bring, when we should be looking at price points, when we feel there might be some shortage of organic corn, it might be a good time to market. And if we're going to do that as individuals, my farm thinking alone, that's 20, 30 phone calls every couple days to understand that around the U.S. And so that's what we bring at AgriSecure in the transition support through organic and the year-round support of having a team of people understanding all these different facets of growing. And now, can't say we're going to be the best and we never make mistakes, because we definitely do. But I feel as a team we are learning so much each day that we can provide benefits to growers that haven't been done in organic before, because we've built this network that brings information together and then distributes it to the network as an overall. So what we want to do at AgriSecure is take the tuition that we paid, and Ken's paid it too, he's learning as well, and bring that into the organic expertise and innovation in farm planning and execution, certification support, and organic crop marketing. Again, we don't want to sell you anything. We're not input providers. We're not selling organic crop marketing. We're not insurance people. We want to bring that network that we have of trusted advisors in with us to do that, because this takes a lot of information, a lot of things done correctly, details done correctly to make this successful. And I don't want to scare anybody away, because it is possible. It's just there's a lot of pitfalls that can come in this organic or transition to organic and then organic production. And so just leave you off, Keith Dodden's a grower up in north central Iowa. He's transitioned quite a few acres. You know, he was a little leery coming on board with us, but Kenn works with him now, and we've brought a lot of value to what he's been doing. Again, one of the things that me and Kenn talked with him last year, he was going to do corn, soybeans transition, and we sat down and worked through the numbers, and he ended up doing oats, 450 acres of oats. And it didn't, we'll be honest, it didn't turn out as well as we had hoped. But if we went back and we looked at the numbers, he had a lot more risk on soybeans and probably would have lost a lot more money, and invested 3 to 5x the time into doing that, as well as capital into that transition. So with that, I will unmute and we will go into questions. Maybe.
Yeah, I guess I'll go. I really did enjoy your presentation. One of my main questions is to talk about your inputs. I'm in an area where we don't have a lot of access to things like that. There's some feedlots that are over 40, 50 miles away. At that point, what is the main thing? Is you're going to eat that extra expense, or is there an alternate way to kind of... Go in your room and play!
Oh. Here, I'm going to mute all. All right, Adam, will you ask your question again? Adam, can you hear me?
Okay, I unmuted myself again.
Yep.
Question is, we're looking at transitioning some CRP acres, but one of the things we're really concerned about is the nutrient inputs. There are some feedlots relatively close to us, but I think they're all between 30 and 40 miles away. Is that one of those you're just going to eat the extra cost of getting it to your place, or is there an alternate route you can go other than just yours?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple questions in there to address, Adam. And number one, the numbers are going to tell us what is possible. You know, I don't know the cost of manure. I don't know what your trucking freight is out there. I mean, I could do quick math and understand it. That the numbers will tell you what that is. And all the numbers combined, not just your manure number. So figuring out that plan, and the last thing you plug in place is your manure number to see what profitability that brings to your farm. And so that's number one I start with. And so the second thing to reiterate here is cattle manure is tough to do organic farming with. It's not impossible. It's just tough because you bring a lot of weed feed into it. So we like chicken manure and hog manure, but again, we know that's not all available. And then the third part of that we like to understand again is, all right, what is my manure number? What's a profitable level to use? Does it sustain my growth, my rotation? And then how do I plan my rotation to provide the nutrients that I'm missing? And so thinking of organic production, I could get most dry P and K, calcium, sulfur. So I'm really lacking nitrogen. So how do I develop my rotation around providing that most nitrogen for the crops that are are needing that nitrogen. And for example, we work up with a guy in South Dakota, another one that's not able to get access to a lot of manure. And his rotation is built around alfalfa and corn. And he understands he's not going to do, again, I'll say 200 bushel corn. It's a lower amount, but it's still profitable for him to do, figuring out his entire 5-year rotation that he doesn't need. He's not as reliable. He doesn't need manure like everybody else uses in the Midwest because he's thought through his plan. He understands the economics and what his targets are that he needs to hit. Does that answer it, Adam?
I think so. That answers a lot of the questions. The other one is, again, we're transitioning some CRP acres. Is there any good way to do that other than just get the heavy tillage out, or is that really your only option?
Don't plant corn. I've tried it 3 years because corn's obviously the most profitable crop. Till it and plant soybeans, and you'll have the best soybeans you'll raise organic.
We're a little dry for soybeans. I'm out in Colorado. So that's
all right.
Not an option for us.
Whatever you do, what I found out in CRP is not to plant something that needs nitrogen. That soil just seems dead. And I put 10 tons of chicken manure just to, push the limits on some CRP coming out. Still, I could not raise corn to save my life. It just, that biology, the turning of nutrients in that soil does not seem to happen until year 2 in that CRP.
Okay, so a legume of some kind is typically your go-to for that first year. Have something like that.
Yep.